Well, thank you, Jim, and I appreciate being here very much, and I know that I've met some of you before. I think the last time I was here, I was talking about it being very cold, and it was 54 degrees. So this morning, when I got off the plane, I was laughing at myself thinking of that moment because it was absolutely freezing. So anyway, thank you very much for having me. So Florida Virtual School was actually founded on answering one question, and that question was, what if? When we first started, I had 9 staff members, and we sat in the middle of a room, and I took a piece of paper, and I wrote the word student on that piece of paper, and I put it in the middle of the table. And I said, imagine if we could design a school that was all about the student and not about the adult schedules. What if we could have the best teachers in the state teach any student in the state, regardless of their zip code? What if school didn't have to start so early that our kids were at a bus stop at 5:30 a.m. in the dark and end at 2 o'clock or 2:30 because it was time for football practice? What if a student didn't have to fail algebra because on June 1st the school year ended? What if a student could actually access their teacher at a time that was conducive to their needs? What if a student could have a private conversation anytime they wanted with the teacher, or a private tutoring session with that teacher on a Saturday, on a Sunday, or at 8:30 at night? What if they could have one-on-one personal learning? What if we could reinvent school where time did not hold students captive? What if we could recreate schools so that it was not about the bureaucracy of today that we've built over the last 100 years, but it was truly about the student? So in 1997, we started with 77 students with a Break the Mold grant, and that's exactly what we set out to do. It was our goal at that time to actually create something that was dramatically different than our schools. We didn't want to replicate what was going on in the schools simply by putting content online and following the same schedule. We wanted to provide students a completely different learning experience. So Florida Virtual School today, we are actually today in all 50 states in some form or fashion, and we are serving 68 countries in some form or fashion. That could be that we're providing content. It could be that we're providing tuition-based services through our global school. We have some unique legislation that allows us and actually challenges us to be entrepreneurial. So it's been kind of fun because what happened is back in the early 2000s, schools started saying to Florida, wait a minute, now you've developed all this stuff. Could we just use it? And at that point, we did not have firm legislation, and so we had a forward-thinking governor at the time, and he said, let's put it in there. So it actually, our legislation directs us to license and sell what we do out of the state as a public school, and those dollars then come back into the school for research and development. When you look at Florida Virtual today, we've come a long way from those 77 students back in 1997. I looked at our numbers today, and we have approximately 170,000 active Florida students online today. That's in Florida. We have approximately 3,500 somewhere else around the globe. At the end of this year, we expect to complete 400,000 half-credit completions, which is how we measure, how we're measured with our funding. That'll probably equate, when it's all said and done, to about 250,000 students in the state of Florida. That sounds like a really big number, doesn't it? It's just this much. It's less than 2% of the population that's available for us to serve, even in the state of Florida. So we still feel like we have a long way to go. So today, we went from 5 courses to 125 courses, AP, electives, and core courses for students. We have 2,200 staff members and expect for that to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 by June 1st. You heard Jim talk about Florida Virtual School, or Florida having the one course requirement. That kicked in a couple of years ago. The first year, people pretty much ignored it and hoped it would go away. Today it is still there, so there's a little bit of panic. So we have some districts that have said, well, we're going to send all of our juniors to Florida Virtual School this year. So we're having heart palpitations. It's a good problem to have, but at the same time, we are looking to hire 1,000 teachers in the next 3 months. So grab a hold of that one. So people ask, does this work? What's the validity in virtual education? And are the kids cheating? Who's doing the work? Are their parents doing the work? You have to ask all those questions, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we talk today. But I wanted to show you some real results. Florida has put in place what we call end-of-course exams, and you may have those as well here in Massachusetts, but it's new for us. It's only been in the last few years, couple of years. And algebra was the first course. It was piloted last year, and then this year it counted. So when we looked at our students, you'll see the 2012, that's this past year that we're working on. Our part-time students scored 15% higher than the state of Florida students. Now, what's most interesting about that is when you look at those numbers, our algebra students, we had approximately 10,000 of them. About 7,000 of them were credit recovery. Now, what's really interesting is we thought that our full-time students would actually score better than our part-time students. And our full-time students are still, it's a small amount at this point in time. We have approximately expect to have about 5,000 or 6,000 FTE this year complete. And so we asked ourselves, what caused that? And we really do think it has to do with the fact that Florida Virtual School was founded on the premise of any time, any place, any path, any pace, where a student could enroll any day of the year, where a teacher would grab that student as an individual. We like to say every student has a front row seat. Identify where that student is today, determine where that student needs to be, and then take them there on an individual basis. So we're exceptionally proud, as you might imagine, of those results. In addition, our minority percentage is close to 50% at this point in time. Our AP exam results, these mirror the last 8 years. What's important to note, too, about the end-of-course exams and the AP exams is we don't administer them. So students are actually in a very unfamiliar environment when they take these courses, our students are. But the total, if you look at the total, the sum of the total, we outperform the state and the nation. 46% of our students come from high minority, low performing schools, as well as rural schools. A lot of our students who take the AP courses with us are kids who didn't make the cut in their traditional school. We don't have an entrance exam for AP. Students can sign up and take AP. If they don't do well, shortly after we figure that out, together we make a collective decision that we move them into another course, into a regular course. So this has been a great benchmark for us. The other thing that we did a couple of years ago, which was quite controversial, but we thought quite important, is we require all of our students to take the exam, not necessarily pass the exam with a 3, 4, or 5, but in order to get credit from us, to get an AP credit from us, they have to take the exam. So 87% of our students take the exam, up 19% from 3 years ago. So if we think a little bit about our vision, one of the things that I want to kind of transfer to you guys is what's your vision? What do you want to do? What problem do you want to solve? What challenge do you want to tackle? Because you know what? When we started, everybody thought that it was like Mikey. You know, remember the commercial with Mikey? Mikey will eat anything? Well, it was like, oh, credit recovery, give it to Florida Virtual School. Oh, incarcerated students, give it to Florida Virtual School. Oh, they've been expelled, give them to Florida Virtual School. And all of a sudden we found ourselves going, wait. Now we have all those kids. But when we started, it was really important to have a first focus on what problem are we going to try to tackle first? What population are we going to serve? So it's going to be important that you, as you look at your programs as they grow, that you establish your needs and you identify what your priorities are. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. In addition, you're going to need to look at the needs of your infrastructure. People sometimes forget that there's all this stuff that goes on in the back end behind a course and behind an instructor. You're going to have to make decisions about, what is your LMS, your student information system, and does your student information system really work for virtual education, or are you going to have a terrible time with that student information system because it was built for a traditional classroom on a traditional schedule if indeed you intend to give your kids flexibility. You're going to need to make decisions about, where do your teachers work? Do they have to stay in the school building if they're part-time and work in that school building after school? Or might they work from home where their supervisor can't see them? You also have to make decisions about the technology. Are you going to put a laptop in the hand of every student? Are you going to put a laptop in the hand of every teacher that teaches for you? If you want them to communicate with kids a lot, which we do, are you going to provide cell phones or a cell phone stipend? Those are all questions that you may not have thought about that oftentimes can get really dicey. To me, I don't think about it much anymore because we tackled those challenges long ago. But they're really dicey decisions to make when you get right down to writing your requirements. So I encourage you first to make sure you establish what are your needs and what challenges are you trying to solve. Next, there's a huge learning curve. It's a great opportunity. So as you tackle this new challenge, realize that professional development will absolutely be key to your success. Hire the best. Hire the absolute best. Our employment process for hiring teachers is long. It's arduous. It's lengthy. We want to make sure that they know what they're getting into before they sign up. It's more, when you think about a traditional interview and you think about a teacher might come in, meet with a principal for 30 minutes, maybe 45, maybe 15. And we make a hiring decision very quickly based on a resume and a quick conversation. When people sign up to teach virtual education, it's like starting over. It's like being a beginning teacher all over again. Great teachers in the classroom may not necessarily be great teachers online, and vice versa. You may have a teacher in a classroom that struggles with classroom management who might be fabulous online because they're very organized, but they just weren't great in terms of how they managed a moving classroom. So hire only the best and be very picky. Make professional learning a top priority. It typically gets cut when the budgets get tight. It will be your savior. Teachers will tell you that when they come into this environment, a lot of their skills are transferable and many and most of their skills will be new. They will be learning lots and lots of technological systems at once. They will be learning how to make sure students and parents feel a smile through the phone. They will be learning that students don't always show up, whereas they had to show up at school. Professional development will be your lifeline. What's your instructional model going to look like? Are you going to ask that it's a intense teacher-pupil relationship? Ours is. We expect a tremendous amount of communication with our students and our teachers. Our teachers call our students the first couple of months that they come on board with us every single week. They have to talk to the parents every month forever. And they have to have real conversations about how their students are doing. That's intense. That costs money. Or you can go the other route and anywhere in between where a student is primarily working on their own unless they raise their hand and ask for help. Are you going to have a full-time model? Are you going to have a blended model? Are you going to have a blended, and students, we call our model a self-blend. Kids actually take some courses at school, some courses with us. And then we also have a full-time model that we partner with Connections Academy to deliver, and where kids are actually at home and they are taking all their courses online on a traditional schedule. And then we have blended models in the schools that are virtual learning labs where we have our teacher provide the instruction and they have a facilitator or a teacher in the classroom working with the kids on ground. So what's your instructional model going to look like? Are you going to build or are you going to buy? That's always a big question. Sometimes building seems attractive because you think, oh, I'll own it. But guess what? It's kind of like a car. You have to maintain it. And maintaining it costs money too. So you've got to make good decisions about what you want to be doing in 5 years when you make your decision for your first year. And then how are you going to market? How are you going to make sure people know that you're doing this and this is available to your students? And then how are you going to evaluate that? How are you going to evaluate how good the program is? We do lots of stakeholder surveys, and you can find them all on our website. So there's a lot to think about. So when we again started, we decided that our commitment was to put the student at the center of everything we did, every decision that we made. So whether or not we were looking at, today we're looking at how are we going to tackle the Common Core standards and what's that going to mean in terms of curriculum development and instructional design. And oh, by the way, it's looming and it's taking place. We're changing a tire on a moving car. Or if we're thinking about what's the next legislative policy that we need to look for, we're always thinking about what does this mean to the student? And if you put that student first, it's amazing what results you can have in terms of how you develop and design your program. So over the years, we've been very fortunate to have led some of the charge with online education. We feel very proud that we've been involved in bringing it to the forefront of our educational system, and that we've had the good fortune of a great deal of support from our state, from our legislature, from our governor, from our Department of Education, from our community. And one of the things I want to leave you with is that, you know, just like our traditional schools are not one size fits all, they don't necessarily work for all students, do they? Well, our students are not one size fits all. Not everything works for every student. And the great news is that now it doesn't have to. So just imagine, what if school became a verb instead of a noun? Thank you.